Hey guys, so we are on interview number 3 with Grandpa Roy, and tonight we're going to talk about how he met my grandma and when they got married and had children. We're going to keep these videos at about a half an hour. Anyways, this is my grandpa, as most of you guys know. Do you just want to tell them a little bit about yourself?
I'm Chanda's grandpa, and you do the math. I was born on May 2nd, 1928, at Caledonia, North Dakota.
That makes you 91.
That makes me 91 years, 5 months, and 21 days, and 15 minutes.
He was born May 2nd, 1928. So he always says he's 92. He turned 92 the day after he turned 91. Okay. You're going to make me laugh through this whole video.
Well, every morning I get up, I have to tell everybody I'm a day older than I was yesterday.
Okay. Well, us women, we kind of lie about our age. We're not 91 till we hit 91.
Okay, I'm 91.
Okay. Okay, so let's start with Grandma.
I met Grandma when I was home on leave after I got back from Korea on April 1951.
But you met her when she was 14, right?
Right.
And then you met her at a dance, or no? Did you meet her at a dance?
No, I met her in Shelley, Minnesota, but we happened to be in the same town at the same time.
And then fast forward, what, 6 years?
Yeah, I spent 4 years in the Navy after that. And then when I was home on leave after we come from Korea, I met her in April 1950. Second time. The first time I only met her and give her a ride home. Second time we dated for 30 days when I was home on leave. I went back to the Navy for 6 months, and I got discharged, and I had asked her when I was home to marry me, and she said yes, and she set up plans for the wedding on October 10th, 1951, and on November 1950, 10th, we got married exactly a month after I got out of the Navy.
Okay, so you met her and then kind of forgot about her, and then you and your friends were in Fargo, and then kind of tell that story.
Well, we were on the way home after spending a day in Fargo. We went by NDSU main gate, and a lady stood there, and one of my friends said, there's a lady waiting for a bus, and the other one says, that's Dolores Chandler. And I said,
No, Dolores Halstead.
Dolores Halstead. We weren't married yet. You're going to be fussy.
I'm going to be fussy.
And anyway, we dated for them 30 days. We got married November 10th, 1951. I went to work for Standard Oil exactly 3 months later. And I worked for 5.5 years in Hillsboro. Our first son.
Okay, slow down. Slow down. We did this video once and we couldn't hear him, and then so I told him he didn't have to go so much into detail on everything. So now he's like super fast.
Well,
I want you to tell the stories, Grandpa, but you don't have to tell like every little detail of everything. So,
okay.
But you don't have to go super fast and get it all done in 10 minutes.
We had a son, Stuart, is Chanda's father. We had a son, Jamie. We had a son, Brian.
Okay, smarty pants. Okay.
We adopted a daughter.
We're not going to do this video over, so just calm down here. Okay, he's trying to be funny.
I better put my hearing aid in because I don't hear what you're saying.
I'm gonna talk louder,
Yeah,
but
that's what
you
you
need to go
said.
slower. Okay? Okay, so we're gonna rewind and we're gonna go to you met grandma and you at the bus stop and you went and talked to her and gave her a ride home and then you guys fell in love and dated. You were nonstop together for 30 days before you went back on leave or went back from leave. And in those 30 days you proposed. Correct.
Right.
What made you propose so fast?
I had 30-day leave. I had to make it fast.
Because you were 23 and you dated a few ladies before grandma came along, but nothing serious. So grandma planned the wedding, and when you got back when? You were gone 6 months.
I got back on October 10th, 1951. I got married in November 10th, 1951. 3 months later, I got a job in Hillsborough with Standard Oil. 5.5 years later, we moved to Devil's Lake for 2 years. Our second son, Jamie, was born, and he had one daughter. Then I moved to Neillsville for 45 years. We had our third son, Brian. Then 3 years later, we adopted our daughter.
Okay, so you had dad in Hillsborough in 1954, and then you worked for Mobile, and then you took a job in Devil's Lake, had your second son, Jamie, and then you told the story that you made a joke, something like if somebody was to retire, you wanted that job.
Right.
And so you went to and applied for it in Fargo, right?
Right.
Okay, so that's what brought you to Neillsville, correct?
Right.
Okay. So you started your own mobile business in Neillsville, and then you had 3 sons, and grandma wanted a daughter. But before my dad was born, my dad was the firstborn, they had a daughter that was stillborn, correct?
Right.
And what happened there?
4 years later, Stuart was born, your father. 4 years later, Jamie was born. 4 years later, Brian was born.
And then you met Don and Harvey.
Yes, and they were friends that ended up living next door to us. And we've known them ever since, and right now they live in East Grand Forks, we live in Grand Forks. I'm retired. My wife passed away September 13th, 1912.
No, 2012.
2012.
Okay, no, but we're not. Okay, so we're going to go back to. Okay, you met Don and Harvey in Devil's Lake, and then they ended up moving to Neillsville, but they couldn't have children. So they had adopted 3 children, which were in the same age range as your children. And then the ladies got together, your wife and Donna, and they planned something. Do you want to talk about that?
They took and decided, let's adopt a daughter. So they adopted a daughter, we adopted a daughter. And she was 14 months old. We picked her up in Winnipeg, got a passport to bring her into the United States, and all 4 of our children got married, and they all had children. And Stuart had 2 children, Jamie had 1 child, and Brian had 3 daughters, and Terry has a son that died, and then she had Brooke.
Yeah, but we'll get into the grandchildren probably in the next video. So do you want to give just tell a little bit about, living in Nilsville and being married to Grandma and what you did for a living and just our church life and, being Christians and all that. I mean, you married Grandma, one, because she was a Christian, two, she was absolutely beautiful. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, about the only thing I can say is she was absolutely beautiful, and we were married for 63 years. She passed away in 2013,
No, 12.
2012 on September 13th.
Yeah. So we're coming up on 7 years or 6 years. Wait, 7 years. We're tired. It's almost 11 o'clock here. But so yeah, just talk a little bit about mobile and just being a dad and
I was with him from 1958 until 1992. I retired. The business was sold to the Shelley Creamery, and they hired me for 13 years.
because you sold your business to them.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I worked for Walmart in Grand Forks for 5.5 years.
Months.
And then it's pretty much, as far as going to church, we made almost every Sunday church, and it was kind of easy to make church because we only lived a half a block from the church.
Well, it was like right next door. I mean, we walked there. It took us 30 seconds to walk there, but you took care of the church and we lived in a very small town of about 150 people, right? We knew everybody.
Right now it's 94 people counting the cats and the dogs.
So you moved to Grand Forks back in 2008.
2007, November.
Okay. But let's just talk about just raising kids and what it was like to just you worked all the time. We had 2 acres and he worked on the gas truck and came home and painted and mowed the lawn and he just could never sit down. He was always busy, busy, busy. And Grandma, you want to tell a little bit about Grandma, what she did for a living and
So she answered the telephone for me for all the orders when I delivered to the farmers, and I delivered for heating oil. And she done that the whole time we were in Nielsville. And she pretty much, if she wanted to go shopping, our neighbor drove her to the farm because she didn't drive. And my aunt and uncle answered the telephone for the business. That's about all she took off was them few days and all those years. Otherwise, she was
baking
pretty
cakes.
much our home base.
Yeah, and then she baked cakes all the time.
She was kind of high strung, not hardly leaving the house. And she went to the doctor, and he said, "Well, is there something you could do to take up that space?" So she started baking wedding cakes. She done that for over 30 years. She made beautiful cakes.
Yeah, definitely. She made beautiful cakes and they tasted delicious.
And if you promise me the third time that you're going to speak louder, you'll do it.
I made him take his hearing aid out because he was talking so low. So now he's got to talk so high that he can hear himself. I'm talking about you, Grandpa.
I don't know. I see you moving your lips.
Okay, so let's see. So you worked basically around the clock, 24/6. You always took
If the
Sundays off.
telephone called at January 1st and it was 40 below and it was 2:30 in the morning and somebody was out of fuel, I pulled my clothes on, drove out and filled their tank, started their furnace, went back home and tried to go to bed.
or a half an hour before you had to get up and make the next delivery.
That's right.
He worked all the time. And you always made Sundays about family.
Well,
right? Every Sunday we always went somewhere. We went to visit or we went to movies
Right,
and out to eat.
That's the only day I could take off where I didn't have to worry about the phone ringing.
Yeah. But you always put your family priority. You could have sat home and did nothing and you were always doing something.
Every weekend from the time we were married, we usually tried to do our shopping on the weekend, and if we had to go to Fargo or to Corkson or to Grand Forks, we did.
Because we lived in the middle of nowhere. Right?
What was that?
We lived in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, I know. If you call a town that's got 94 people in it, it was in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. But you were a good grandpa. We always went. You always made sure that we were happy and Grandma could do her shopping. Grandma was a shopaholic, right?
That's right. She never went in a store unless she bought something.
But she could shop at Walmart for 3 hours and maybe buy one or two things. So, I mean, she could have went crazy, but she didn't. She had self-control, but she loved to window shop, right?
Right.
Go to the mall, and Grandpa would be you just go from bench to bench to bench and follow her all the way down the mall hall.
I took and drove her sister and her to Fargo to shop. We went in a store and they each picked out a dress and they just loved it. And they said, let's go to another store and then we can come back. At the end of the day, it was almost closing time. They said, we haven't bought anything and they're closing. So we went back to that first store, got the dress, and went home. And that's a true story.
That's what I do too. I find something I really like, but then I think I can find something better. And I always go back to the very first thing that I first liked. It never fails.
Yes, and if I need a shirt, I go to town, go in the first store I come to, pick up a shirt that I like, pay for it, and go home.
You were such a good husband, though. You did that all the time.
Yeah, you can say that again.
He would sit there for hours upon hours, just in the cafeteria, sitting there waiting for Grandma to finish up her shopping.
All right.
So, you want to talk a little bit about church?
Well, she got sick and ended up having cancer of her ovaries.
No, church. Going to church. Our church life.
Okay, like I say, I lived a half a block from the church. It was the Lutheran church. Our 3 sons went to Sunday school there, was confirmed there, and they went to Climax High School, and all 4 of our children graduated from high school. They all got married. We ended up with 3 sons. We didn't have a daughter, and we wanted one, so we ended up adopting Terry, and she come from Canada because there was none in the Minnesota area up for adoption, and Lutheran Social Service brought in 16 children, and our daughter was 14 months old.
Yeah.
We picked her up on Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
And we drove all the way home from Winnipeg in a snowstorm.
How was that?
Well, it was drifting across the road. We had to hit some drifts pretty hard in order to get through them.
Yeah, and then working on the truck, on the gas truck, you delivered a lot in blizzards and stuff because you had to. Tell about some of the old ladies that you'd call them up and say, there's a storm coming, and do you want me to bring out fuel? And then they'd say, no, I'll be fine. And then he'd get all the way home, and then they'd call you up at 2 o'clock in the morning. Well, I ran out of fuel, and then you'd have to get up and...
Yeah, I had that happen more than once.
And the furnace is going out, and
And there was no furnace man around, so I had to bleed the furnace and start it and make sure that it's working so that they could go back to bed and I could go back to town.
okay. So let me think here. I wish I was doing this live, then people could ask you questions. We should do it live tomorrow, maybe.
Huh?
Do it live where people can ask you questions. Live. He doesn't know what that is. He's 91. Okay, so we'll move on. I know you can't hear me. Okay, do you want to tell another story?
Well, most of my talking are stories.
I know, and you're a jokester.
When I lived 5.5 years in Hillsboro, and I got to know everybody in town and outside of town. Lived 2 years in Devil's Lake, and I got to know everybody. I lived about 45 years in Nielsen, and I got to know everybody in Halstead, Shelley, Nielsville, Climax, and all Beltrami, and all the farm in between.
The whole county, because he was
Right.
the gas man. And he
got-
always brought candy to all the kids. He always had candy in the truck.
I give them suckers when I finished with filling the tank. I'd count the kids when I got it, come in the yard, and when I was ready to go, I give them suckers, and I said, I'll give you suckers if you show me who can run the quickest to the house. I would count them, I'd look under the truck, I'd walk around the truck, and then I'd drive out of the yard because I was scared to death of ever running over even a dog.
And you did end up running over a dog.
I did. And the woman come running out and said, we've been expecting somebody to run over for the last many years. She said, it's all right. It's not your fault. I said, well, I'll drive the dog out to the dump yard and dig it down and bury it. And I did. But when I picked that dog up, it was like picking up a half full of sack of water. It was all crushed. And to think that done that to the dog, what would have happened if I had done the same thing to a child?
Yeah, that was your biggest fear.
That's my biggest fear.
Yeah. Do you want to take a drink of water?
If I have to.
Yeah, you should. You guys, we need prayer as well. He's still struggling with his lungs, and he goes home on Tuesday, so we got a doctor set up for a pulmonologist. So I think it's just a lot to do with the altitude, and I'm telling them about your lungs. We're asking for prayer.
Okay.
Can you tell them thank you for praying for me?
I sure would love it. Go ahead and pray for me.
Amen. Okay, so where were we? Okay, so yeah, and then all your kids rode with you on the truck.
What was that?
All the kids, all your children, and me and Keith, we all rode on the truck with you all the time.
Yes. My one that rode with me all the time, if I got up at 4 o'clock in the morning to fill the road construction so they could start work at 5, as soon as I opened the door on the opposite side would open and our third son would get in and he'd be pretty tired. He'd lay right down in the seat and go to sleep. And I belonged to the Nielsville Flying Club with 20 other guys. We had a Cessna 140. When I got done doing my delivery, we'd go by there where we...
Slow down a little bit, Grandpa. Slow down a little bit.
We'd go by the farm where we had the landing strip, and I'd practice landings. I'd fly to Crookston and practice landings. And the more I learned about flying, the more it scared me. is you got to know an awful lot about flying when you come to a deal where something happens and you have to take control of that plane and do the right thing. And so I kind of stopped flying so much.
Grandma never went flying with you. She was scared of it.
She's lucky she's getting in the car with me.
Why didn't Grandma ever learn how to drive?
Well, I was teaching her one time and she was going to follow me down to Fargo. I was going to put a tank on a brand new truck I got 2 miles south of Shelley. I stopped to tell her something and she come along behind me, and instead of putting the foot on the brake, she put it on the foot speed. And I stood right in the back of the truck. And I was just lucky that she found the brakes. And then she drove no more.
I could never imagine Grandma driving, ever. Grandpa was her chauffeur. You drove her anywhere she wanted to go, and she got her hair done every Friday. So no matter how busy Grandpa was, he always came home to make sure she went and got her hair done. Right.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so anything else you want to talk about before we get into the best part of your life where I was born?
Well, I used to spend anywhere from an hour to 2 hours waiting for her to put her makeup on before we went anywhere.
Yeah, she wouldn't even get out of bed without putting her lipstick
Right.
on. Yeah.
Yeah, she was fussy about everything. I got up to go to the bathroom one night, and when I come back to bed, the bed was made.
Yeah, that's Grandma. She was perfect in everything.
Right.
Her house was always immaculate. She looked beautiful all the time. You were very blessed to find that lady.
I was blessed to have her put up for me.
Well, yeah. You're a
I was
character.
particular. Everything had to be done exactly right. I do the same thing today.
Yeah, you're pretty organized. You're pretty, just everything's in line all the time, even at 91.
Yeah, and I'm 91 years old. And when I got out of the Navy, I had $600. I bought a car. And then I had $500 in the bank that I sent home every month, $25 bond. I cashed that in, and I used that there to live on until I got my first check when I got a job. And when I got that job, I never was without a job until I retired.
Yeah.
And this is the honest truth. I bought that stove and refrigerator, made one payment, and I paid a couple of dollars interest, and I got home, turned around and went back over and paid it off. I bought my second car. The first one I paid $600 cash with the money I got when I got out of the Navy. The second car I paid $1,300 for to put it on payment. And then from then on, every car I ever bought, every truck I ever bought, every 4 years a new truck, I saved the money up. I never paid 1 cent interest on any truck I bought because it was easier to pay for cash, and it's much easier than paying for the cash plus interest.
Yeah, tell them about when you bought your stove and your refrigerator and you got that first bill and you said the heck with this, and you went home and
Right.
And what? Got your money.
That's right.
You tell the story. This is about you.
Merry Christmas.
You tell the story. How you were not going to pay interest. You refused to pay interest.
The thing is, if it was an emergency where I had to have something, I had to borrow money, I would have done it. But I didn't have the emergency. I just waited until I had the money, and then I would buy it.
Yeah, but when you and Grandma first got married, you bought the stove and you bought the refrigerator. And you were so disgusted because they charged you so much in interest. And you
Right,
said, the heck with this. And you went home and got your money and went and paid the bill off in full.
right.
Right.
And from then on, anything I bought, I it what I had was used, but it was still running, and I waited until I got the money before I bought one.
Yeah. Okay, well, we're on the 30-minute mark. So we're going to stop this video and we'll go to the next video and we'll talk about grandchildren.
Right.
Does that sound like a plan?
Can I say anything yet?
Well, you can finish this video. Say something, whatever you want to say.
I'm 91 and I can start saying something and I forget what I'm going to say.
Say goodbye for now. We'll see you in a little bit.
Goodbye for now. I'll see you in a little bit.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Okay, guys, we'll see you in a bit.